In exercise 10.02, we look at the concept of the maximum or the minimum point on our, well, it's really on our graph of the quadratic equation. Now, I touched on this slightly at the beginning in the introduction. Maximum is just probably, the maximum point is probably just what you imagine it to be, the highest point. Now, the highest point, if your parabola is this way, the highest point is somewhere up there called plus infinity. It's going on forever. So when our parabola actually sits like that, we don't talk about the maximum point. However, when our parabola is upside down, so when it's going this way, you can see it reached what we would say is a maximum point, and then it turned and it went down. The minimum of these, again, would be down at negative infinity somewhere, and so we don't really talk about the minimum of this shaped parabola. So we've got a maximum, and on this one here, we've got a minimum, because our understanding of the word minimum is how far down it goes, the smallest amount of y, or the smallest value for y. And you can see that's at this point, so we'd need to know what the y value is, and then it continues to go back up. So it's all about the y value. That's really important. If you're asked for a maximum or a minimum, you're giving the y value. It occurs at the vertex. So remember, this is the vertex, this is the vertex, and it's the y value of the vertex that determines whether it's a maximum or a minimum. So we've just established that these upside down ones will have a maximum, and to get an upside down parabola, however, a is negative, and that created the upside down parabola. So it will have a maximum y value. Now, they don't very often tell you that it has to be the y value. They'll just ask you for the maximum. You have to be giving the y value. A function where a is positive will have a minimum. How do we determine it? It is the y ordinate of the vertex will tell you whether you've got, will determine whether it's got a maximum or a minimum. Now, we've had established for our fairly basic parabolas, these ax squareds plus or minus a constant, their vertex is always on the y-axis. So we know that it will either sit at the origin, or it'll come down and go up and it'll cut here. Now we established that as C. So we can tell from the equation, or we can tell from the graph, what the minimum value is going to be. Likewise with a maximum value. So remember that I said that the vertex would be on the y-axis. The y-axis is where x is 0. So if we've got the equation, we can the y-ordinate may be found by substituting x equal to 0 into the equation. Now you might have to read that and process that a few times, but please do that so that you know how to find the maximum value when the equation is in this basic form. The graph would be on the have its vertex on the y-axis. the x-ordinate of the vertex for these is at x is equal to 0. That's what it means to be on the y-axis. So find the maximum value of y equals minus x squared plus 4. Put x equal to 0. It's pretty clear to see that that's going to be 0 plus 4. And remember I said it's all about the y-ordinate. Therefore, y equals 4 is the max value. Then we've got the equations that get a little bit more complicated. So they've got the x squared term, they've got the x term, and they've got a constant. These do not have their vertex on the y-axis. It's moved away. The x value of the vertex is not x is naught anymore. You have to learn this, that the x value of the vertex occurs at minus b on 2a. And you're probably wondering, what's b and what's a? Well, remember the general form for the parabola is back here. So these are equations of the form ax squared. So there's your a and there's your a. Bx, and we need that as well. So to find the x value of our vertex, then we need to be able to read a from the equation and b from the equation. So a is the number in front of the x squared, b is the number and the sign, by the way, in front of the x. The y value, it goes on to say, will be found by substituting the x value, just like we subbed the x value here, back in the simple one, into the equation to find the y value. So we'll actually have two steps. They're more complicated parabolas, and the solution is more complicated. It involves finding the x value, not just assuming it's naught or not thinking it's naught. Find the x value and sub that. So the first thing we need to do is to establish the values of a. A is the number in front of the x squared, and in this case it's 1. B is the number in front of the x, and in this case it is negative 5. Using now this little formula here, minus b on 2a will give us the x-ordinate for the vertex is at minus b. Minus 5 is plus 5 on 2 times a is 2. So it's occurring at x is equal to 5 on 2 is 2.5. I might just write that as 2.5. That'll be easier to use when we come to find our y value. Maximum or minimum is all about the y value. So y is our 2.5 squared minus 5 times 2.5 plus 4. So I've been to the calculator, see if I can just slide that down. And you can see that, yes, we get y is equal to negative 2.25. Now, we know that to graph this, because the value of in front of the x squared is a positive, it looks like that. Obviously, it will have a minimum. Therefore, the minimum value is negative 2.25. You have to give the negative on that as well. I'll leave examples 3 and 4 and do both in class with you, just so that you can see me set it out again, and you can ask me some questions about it. For some of you though, you might be feeling fine to get started with 1002.